In the autumn of 1913, a young archivist named Daniel Whitmore stepped into a dimly lit basement beneath the old federal building in Washington, D.C. The air smelled of dust, aged paper, and secrets. Daniel was not supposed to be there, but curiosity had always been stronger than fear. He carried a small oil lamp, its flickering light casting long shadows on rows of wooden shelves packed with forgotten documents, records no one had touched in decades. Most of them were considered irrelevant, but Daniel believed history never forgets, it only hides. As he moved deeper into the archive, something caught his eye. A locked iron box. Unlike the others, it was not labeled. No date, no category, no marking. Just silence. And sometimes silence speaks the loudest. Daniel hesitated. He'd been warned before. Some records were sealed for a reason. But warnings only fueled his obsession. Using a thin metal tool, he forced the lock open. The sound echoed through the basement like a whisper from the past. Inside the box, he found a leather-bound ledger. Dark, worn, heavy. It felt important, almost alive. He carefully opened it. The first page contained a single line. This record must never be seen by the public. Daniel's heartbeat quickened. That was all he needed. The ledger was dated 1871, a year that most Americans barely remembered, but Daniel knew better. 1871 was not just another year, it was a turning point, a year when something changed, quietly, something powerful. As he turned the pages, he began to realize something was terribly wrong. These weren't ordinary records, they were transcripts, meetings, agreements, names of powerful men, industrialists, politicians, financiers. And what shocked him most, many of those names still controlled the country, even decades later. One entry stood out. It described a private meeting held in New York. No official record of it existed, yet here it was in black ink. The document detailed a plan, not just for economic control, but for shaping the future of the nation. A plan to influence laws, to control currency, to manipulate public perception. Daniel froze. Was this real, or was it some elaborate fabrication? But then he saw signatures, real signatures, men whose portraits hung in government buildings, men who were celebrated as heroes. Daniel whispered to himself, if this is true, then everything we've been taught is incomplete. Days turned to nights as Daniel secretly studied the ledger. He stopped going out, stopped meeting friends, stopped living a normal life. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Then one night, everything changed. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, coming down the basement stairs. Daniel quickly blew out the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. The footsteps grew closer. Someone else knew. A voice echoed, "Mr. Whitmore, you've seen something you shouldn't have." Daniel's blood ran cold. He wasn't alone anymore. The man stepped into the faint moonlight. Tall, well-dressed, calm, too calm. "You should have left the past buried," the man said. Daniel gripped the ledger tightly. "Who are you?" he asked. The man smiled. "The question is not who I am, but how much you've already discovered." Silence filled the room, heavy, dangerous. The man's voice lingered in the darkness. "And now you have a choice." Daniel tightened his grip on the leather-bound ledger. His palms were sweating, but his voice barely held steady. "What kind of choice?" The man stepped forward, just enough for his face to be partially visible in the pale light slipping through the basement window. Sharp features, controlled expression, eyes that revealed nothing. The kind that determines whether you walk out of here alive
or disappear into history like so many others. Daniel's mind raced. This wasn't just a warning. This was confirmation. Everything in the ledger was real. "I'm not afraid of you," Daniel said, though his voice betrayed a flicker of doubt. The man smiled faintly. "You should be." He reached into his coat, not for a weapon, but for something far more unsettling. A document, folded, official, sealed. He placed it gently on a nearby table. "You believe you've uncovered a conspiracy, but what you've actually found is a foundation." Daniel didn't move. Foundation of what? The man's eyes locked onto his. Modern power. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. "You see, history is not written by accident. It is designed, structured, controlled." He gestured toward the ledger. "That book is a blueprint." Daniel shook his head. "No, that's impossible. You're talking about controlling an entire nation." The man chuckled softly. "Not controlling, guiding." He began pacing slowly. "In 1871, after the chaos of the Civil War, the United States stood at a crossroads: weak leadership, economic instability, public distrust." He paused. "It was the perfect moment." "For what?" Daniel demanded. "To rebuild the system from the shadows." Daniel's heart pounded. The ledger suddenly felt heavier in his hands. "They created structures, financial systems, legal frameworks, institutions that appeared independent, but were anything but." Daniel flipped through the pages again, faster this time. The patterns were there, connections he hadn't fully understood before. Now they were becoming clear. This can't be legal," Daniel whispered. The man stopped walking. "Legal," he repeated with a faint smile. "Mr. Whitmore, legality is a tool, not a limitation." A cold chill ran down Daniel's spine. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. The man tilted his head slightly. "Because you've already crossed the line." "What line?" "The line between ignorant and awareness." The basement felt smaller now, the air heavier. "You have two options," the man said calmly. "Option 1, you hand over the ledger, walk away, forget everything you've seen, live a quiet, normal life." He stepped closer. "Option 2, Daniel didn't speak. He didn't need to. "You keep digging, you chase the truth, you try to expose it." A pause. "And you will be stopped." The words weren't a threat. They were a promise. Daniel looked down at the ledger. Every instinct told him to walk away, to forget, to survive. But something deeper refused. "If what you're saying is true," Daniel said slowly, "then people deserve to know." The man's expression didn't change. "They don't," he replied. That answer hit harder than any threat. "Why?" Daniel asked. "Because truth," the man said quietly, "is dangerous in the wrong hands." "And who decides that?" Daniel snapped. The man leaned in slightly. "We do." Silence. Daniel took a step back. "You're not protecting the country. You're controlling it." The man smiled again. "Control, protection, stability, these are just different words for the same thing." Outside, thunder rumbled faintly. A storm was coming. Daniel's mind raced. He needed time. He needed a plan. "Let me think," Daniel said carefully. The man studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Of course." He turned and began walking toward the stairs, but before leaving, he stopped. "One more thing, Mr. Whitmore." Daniel looked up. "You're not the first person to find that ledger." A pause, and none of them succeeded. Then he was gone. The sound of footsteps faded. Then silence returned. Daniel stood frozen, the weight of what he had just heard pressing down on him. Slowly, carefully, he opened the ledger again. But this time, he wasn't just reading, he was searching. There had to be something, a clue, a weakness, anything. Page after page, names, dates, meetings, agreements. Then he saw it. A symbol, small, repeated, hidden in the margins of several entries. It wasn't random, it was deliberate, a mark. Daniel leaned closer. His heart began to race again, because this symbol wasn't from 1871. He had seen it before, very recently. In fact, he had seen it earlier that same week on an official government document. Daniel's blood ran cold. "This isn't history," he whispered. "It's still happening." Thunder cracked loudly outside. The storm had arrived, and Daniel Whitmore had just realized something terrifying. He wasn't uncovering the past. He was stepping into an active system.